Okay, this is our final video in the barrier series because it is reconciliation. Okay, reconciliation means the barrier is removed between God and fallen man by the work of Jesus Christ on the cross. And that because of that work, we can be reconciled without an obstacle in the way. So to reconcile means to transfer someone to be transferred from an original fallen state to an elevated, eternal state with God. Propitiation is the Godward side of the cross. If you remember, righteousness and justice must be satisfied. So propitiation is, I'm going to draw a cross here. This is the work of Christ on the cross. This is when he substituted himself for us and died spiritually. He hung on that cross and he was judged and paid for every single sin of every human ever committed with unlimited atonement. God looked down on that work, the substitutionary spiritual death, the unlimited atonement, and the Bible calls that the blood of Christ. So God looked down on that blood and he was satisfied. Jesus' work propitiated God to us because God can look through that work and now he can personally love us because his righteousness and his justice were satisfied with the blood, the work of Christ. So he goes right through there and now he can personally love us. That was propitiation. That's the Godward side of the cross. So now let's talk about the manward side of the cross. That is called reconciliation. And that's kind of like when you are looking up at God. So here we have fallen man who heard the gospel, and at faith alone, in Christ alone, he, because of the work of Christ on the cross, this barrier has fallen, and what is in its place is Jesus Christ. You used to have to go through this barrier to get to God, which was impossible. Now you have to go through Jesus Christ to get to God, which is completely possible because God reconciled man to himself through the work of Jesus Christ. So, at faith alone, in Christ alone, that is believing in him, believing in the work he did, and you can just walk right through Jesus' open arms and right into fellowship with the perfect God of the universe. So let's review the barrier that fell. I'm going to leave that there for a minute so you can pause it and get any Bible verses you wish. And I have this really elementary, childish picture that I drew to review the work that Jesus did on the cross that made it possible for us just to walk right through Jesus' loving arms by believing in faith alone in Christ alone. First of all, we have this barrier here that he knocked down. There it goes. So we had an old sin nature. We were in the slave market of sins. We were a slave to it. Jesus redeemed us out of that slave market and freed us. We are not a slave to the old sin nature anymore unless we choose. Sin is not an issue anymore because of unlimited atonement. Our spiritual death is not a problem anymore because he died spiritually and paid the IOU debt of spiritual death that we owed, and he made us spiritually alive, so we get happy eyeballs now. And now instead of being body and soul, he takes care of that by giving us a body and a soul and a human spirit. So now we are a spiritual being. He takes care of our unrighteousness, which is relative righteousness, which is filthy rags and not good enough for God. And he replaces it with his own perfect righteousness. So now perfect God can come down here and see his own righteousness in us and love us like our own, like his own child. And he declares us righteous and says, you are justified. You are acceptable to me. So he is satisfied with propitiation. Remember, that is looking down on us. He's satisfied with the work of God, Christ. So Christ has propitiated us to God so we can be reconciled to him. And remember, this was our position before. We have been elevated from a lowly position to an elevated position. So it is not about your condition. Sins are paid for. He paid for the sins of the whole world so that anyone who has faith alone in Christ alone can go from this lowly condition to this elevated position. And the only thing that can stop this from happening is your own negative volition, your own choice to not believe. If you have positive volition and you choose to believe, you can be reconciled.